After a grueling Game 6, the Raptors end up getting it done, forcing the Game 7 off the back of the greatest Raptor of all time, Kyle Lowry, increasing his legend yet again. Welcome to Amateur Hour Sports, and it's a good day for Raptor Nation as we force Game 7 tomorrow against the Boston Celtics after going down 2-0 in the series and after going down 3-2 in the series. We have a best of one in the final game of the series, and it comes off the back of tremendous performances from a few Raptors. I mean, almost all of them were absolute dogs throughout the entire game and overtime, playing 50 plus minutes and still hitting some big shots. But big shout out to Kyle Lowry, the greatest Toronto Raptor of all time, for his 33-point performance, yet again showing how clutch he is in those big playoff moments, in those big playoff games. Kyle Lowry is absolutely elite in elimination games. He has shown it time after time after time in his Raptors career, and he showed it yet again in Game 6 against the Boston Celtics. But this game boils down to three players, I think, having the biggest difference on proceedings. It wasn't just, a tight game all the way through. There were a lot of factors associated with it. The Celtics started out better, and it got Raptors fans like myself really sweating. And in the second quarter, it got even worse. I think the game kind of all starts again in the second quarter. The Raptors are down 41-29. Serge Ibaka comes in and lifts the Raptors' spirits, their hopes, by hitting big shots to put us back in the game. Without that Serge Ibaka second quarter, I think that is how the Celtics start their dominance for the game, and they carry it on throughout the rest of the game, and the Raptors don't touch them. If it wasn't for Serge Ibaka coming in and hitting those big shots, I don't give the Raptors a chance to come back in that game. Their heads will start to drop like it did in Game 5, like it did in Game 1, and they won't have any way back. But Serge Ibaka came in, a huge big player, one of the three big players on the court for the Raptors in the game yesterday. And then we get to the third quarter, where the Raptors come out firing, absolutely firing. They wanted it after halftime, and they showed it. 33-25 difference in favor of the Raptors in the third quarter. Guys like Kyle Lowry, guys like Norm, guys like Fred VanVleet. Fred, who had a not so great first half, has a tremendous second half, and it puts us in a position to win. But then, as usual, it seems like the Celtics have done it a lot in this series, especially in Game 2. The Celtics come alive at the start of the fourth quarter, hitting three after three after three. I think it was 3 corner threes in a row to start off the fourth quarter. I mean, it happens so often. The Celtics just have something in their genes when they come out firing like that every time the fourth quarter starts, and they make it a close game again. Then Nick Nurse goes for the gutty decision to go small. OG Anunoby playing as the big for pretty much the fourth quarter all the way through both overtime periods, having to guard Daniel Theis. Basically, the Raptors were giving away the three, and the Raptors were not hitting their three. So they could not keep up with the offensive output being put forth by the Boston Celtics. So what do? They go small. They make sure they don't give away those open threes, but they are susceptible to anything in the interior, because OG Anunoby, though he is a tremendous defender, is not going to be able to guard Daniel Theis possession after possession after possession. And it showed, because Daniel Theis started getting some easy looks on the inside. I mean, the Raptors were up 98-94 with 4:27 left, I think it was, and they didn't get a basket for the rest of regulation. The game ended 98-98, but the Raptors, they had their opportunities on offense. And the Boston Celtics, they weren't hitting their threes anymore. They had to look for everything on the interior. And it forced a lot of Celtics players to have really bad shooting nights. Like Jaylen Brown shot 11 for 30. Kemba Walker shot 2 for 11. The guy who's supposed to be hitting those big shots, the guy I'm most scared of on that Boston Celtics team, Kemba Walker. They weren't having great games. Jason Tatum shot 9 for 21, which is good, and he got a lot of free throws, so that's not a bad performance per se. Marcus Smart also had a great performance, but Kemba Walker did not rise to the occasion like he usually does, even though, when he has a bad game for the first 3 quarters, he becomes elite in the fourth, and he had his moments in the fourth. There was that tough shot to put the Celtics back in contention, but overall, not a tremendous game for Kemba Walker. The Raptors played great defense there, but the Celtics also did. We didn't get any points near the end of the fourth quarter, but I don't put that on not having a big on the court. I put that on not hitting shots, like Pascal Siakam missing so many easy layups. It's so frustrating to see Pascal Siakam play like that, missing the gimmies, the absolute gimmies at the rim. The defensive approach by taking out Serge Ibaka and letting OG Anunoby play as the 5, you had Siakam with the 4, and then you had Fred, Lowry, and Norm as your other 3 players. When you took out Serge Ibaka, the defense became a lot better. You weren't susceptible to the 3, you gave away the interior, but still, OG Anunoby was an absolute goon at getting those rebounds, even on bigger guys like Daniel Tice. Because of that, it let the Raptors, stay in the game from a defensive standpoint, and even though their offense didn't show out, we got to overtime. So we get to overtime. There were some bad shots near the end of the fourth quarter for the Raptors, but still, we get to overtime. We had a good first overtime period, but we let it slip near the end. We weren't hitting shots as much. We go in tied again, but before we go in tied, the Raptors get a big stop, and we have Norman Powell with 19 seconds on the game clock running an isolation play after a timeout. Not even any sort of movement, not a screen, no cuts, nothing to distract the Celtics. It was just give the ball to Norm with 19 seconds and let him ISO Kemba Walker. Was that really the best play you could draw after a timeout? I know Nick Nurse isn't tremendous at drawing post-timeout plays to close out a game, even though, we had the OG Anunoby shot in Game 3. Nick Nurse usually isn't the best at drawing up plays after a timeout. Even if you look at the Kawhi Leonard shot against, the buzzer beater, Kawhi Leonard, you've probably seen it. 3 pictures of it in the background here against the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 7. That wasn't a good play. Kawhi Leonard gets to the top and has to run the baseline and shoot over Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Wasn't the best play. Miracle shot that went down, but Nick Nurse has shown that he isn't great at drawing up those post-timeout plays. We run that isolation, that horrible play. It's nowhere near. It kind of reminds me of literally the first game of the season. The first game of the season, if you recall, we played the New Orleans Pelicans. We were tied at the end of regulation because Norman Powell got an isolation play to end the game. He didn't hit that shot. He shot up a deep 3. He didn't hit it here. But still, we get to the second overtime period. The Celtics came out in this second overtime period firing. They came in hot. And I was very, very nervous for a while because the Raptors were down. But all of a sudden, Norm Powell comes alive. And, in the entire overtime period, he came alive. He hit a 3. We were all hitting 3s. On 3 straight possessions, I think there were 2 3-pointers. Was it 1 from Kyle, 1 from Norm, and then a Norman Powell and 1. And how about Norm with the ice in his veins in the overtime period? Because I think he hit 8 straight free throws in the clutch. I don't know if they were all in overtime, but he had 8 straight free throws. He didn't miss. We didn't shoot free throws well at all in the game, and we haven't shot well from the free throw line in the series. Norman Powell especially is a guilty party in that, but he was absolutely lights out from the free throw line, kept us in the game, and pushed us onward into the lead with that and 1 on Marcus Smart. I love to see that. I absolutely love to see that. Put the Raptors in the positions to win the game. So shout out Ibaka for keeping us in it in the second quarter. Shout out Kyle Lowry for being an absolute legend throughout the game. And shout out Norman Powell for being a huge presence in the clutch. Because of all those plays, because of our defense going small, we end up getting the gutty win. And I think a lot of it is on the back of Nick Nurse's decision to go small, because OG Anunoby really stepped up in that position, getting those offensive rebounds. But how about winning three jump balls in overtime? Those are big possession swings. Those are big possessions in a clutch overtime period where the game is that close. That maybe could have been the difference as we only win by 3 points. So the times I was most nervous was the second quarter, where I thought the Celtics were about to start running away with it, but Serge Ibaka ensures that doesn't happen and gives it the momentum we need to go on and push on and keep the game close. And also at the start of the second overtime period, where the Celtics started to come alive and we needed big shots, big shot after big shot. Like, shout out Kyle Lowry and Norman Powell for playing 50 plus minutes and still managing to hit tough shot after tough shot in the clutch in overtime. This game would have been a lot easier if we had Pascal Siakam show up. He was abysmal, absolutely horrendous. This was one of his worst games of the playoffs. Like, finally he stopped hucking up threes. He only took 5, but he didn't hit any of them. And a lot of them were good open looks from the corner, which should be his spot. He went 5 for 19 from the field with 3 turnovers. Like, he missed some absolute gimmies at the rim, which he should not be missing. But fortunately, we had other guys compensate for the way he played, because it was not good. It was not good on defense either. I thought even like early on in the game, like not when fatigue was a problem, he really lacked that desire and willpower to make a big statement on defense and really try to get in there on the help defense. He looked a little fatigued even early on in the game. He looked a little bit lazy and looked a bit casual, and I really didn't like that, because in other games, even when he isn't shooting well, he's really given it constantly throughout the game. But I didn't quite see that in Game 6, and that needs to be fixed for Game 7, because your best player needs to be one of the guys contributing. He can't just be another guy on the court like he was in the game. Now, the big buzz on social media in the last day after the game is that Jason Tatum turned over the ball because Nick Nurse was too close to the court. Now, Celtics players have had their say on that. Jaylen Brown has said Nick Nurse is a grown man. He needs to be able to control himself on a basketball court. Well, to that I say, Marcus Smart is on your team. So clearly, grown men do not control themselves on a basketball court. And secondly, if you really mistake Nick Nurse wearing a gray shirt when you're wearing green, if you really have that as a mistake, why are you trying to find a scapegoat? That you're really reaching for something to blame on in the game. That happened with 44 seconds left. Yes, a big possession, but Jason Tatum himself said, not Nick Nurse's fault, my fault for the turnover. Now I get that. Sure, maybe Nick Nurse did influence that turnover. Perhaps that did happen. Jason Tatum took blame, but Jaylen Brown is upset. Whatever. But I think there are a lot of other factors and a lot of other decisions that really affected the game as well. Not just that. I think Celtic fans are really trying to find that one scapegoat, and it needs to be that. You also need to address the fact that some of your killers were not shooting well. We also need to address the fact that with 1 second left, OG Anunoby was not given a shooting foul under the rim, but in the overtime period. So let's go back. OG Anunoby with 1 second left. He gets a lob, and as he's going up for the lob, where he's obviously going to shoot, he's fouled. And they call it on the floor. But then we get to the overtime period. A lob is sent to Jaylen Brown. The score is 106-104, and the Celtics were in the bonus anyway. But Jaylen Brown catches a lob off an inbound, and he's fouled in the motion of the alley-oop. Now, Jaylen Brown, even though it was the bonus, he would have shot free throws anyway. Not trying to, bicker about that. Would have shot the free throws anyway. But why was a shooting foul called in that situation and not at the end of regulation when OG Anunoby in a somewhat identical play was going up for an alley-oop? That is also a problem. I think that the refs missed a few calls where the Celtics got hacked at the rim and they did not call it. But the refs also missed some big plays that would have influenced it in the Toronto Raptors' favor. I think the refs were horrendous in the game. I don't think they had a good game at all. But I don't think that blaming the entire game on a pass in the direction of Nick Nurse is how you go about that. Not to mention that Marcus Smart could have had a quadruple-double on top of his triple-double by adding on flops. That guy, throughout the entire game, was just hitting the fucking deck. And even in the last second of the second overtime period, just went for another huge flop. I think the NBA needs to fine this guy again, because clearly the fine has not shown him why he can't do that, and he continues to do that, and he continues to influence the game heavily by flopping. Thankfully, the Raptors get through it all. The Raptors come through the adversity and come out on top in a very, very tight game. That was a 50-50 game. The Raptors managed to just swing the pendulum in their favor and get to Game 7. So, going back to my matchup prediction for these two teams, I had the Raptors winning in 6. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I said the Raptors in 6 or 7, and I gave the Boston Celtics credit that they could also win in 7, and if Jaylen Brown is a sniper throughout the series, they would win in 6. Jaylen Brown has not been the sniper, therefore we are in our 7th game. Now, I'm not brave enough to make a prediction for this game because I truthfully think this is a 50-50 game. Like if I was a betting agency, I would label this game as a pick'em. No point spread, just this is a dead even game. The team who wants it more and is going to hit their shots is going to come out on top and get to the conference final, where you're playing a Miami Heat who has been very lethal. But I think that is a great matchup for either the Boston Celtics or the Toronto Raptors in this playoff run. I would much rather play Miami than Milwaukee in the playoffs, having to play Giannis. Even though he wasn't great, I would rather play Miami than Milwaukee. Not to say that Miami is a nothing team that you can walk through. I just personally would rather play them than Milwaukee. But I acknowledge Miami are lethal right now. They are shooting tremendously. They're playing great basketball. Easily can win that series over the Toronto Raptors or the Boston Celtics. But still, a great opportunity for either of the Celtics or Raptors to progress even further into the NBA Finals. But all this hype from a Game 6, winning the Game 6, it means next to nothing if you don't come out and win Game 7. Sure, we can celebrate this now, but the work starts for Game 7 because you can't come out slow, because perhaps you won't get saved when you're down 41-29 in the second quarter. Come out hot, come out firing, and come with that will to push over and win that game. Are any of you guys brave enough to make a prediction for how this Game 7 is going to go? Because I certainly don't think that I could truly make a decision based on what I've seen in this series. There's no way I can predict who comes out on top. I am just very excited to see this close, intense series come to its conclusion, because it's really having a toll on my heart rate, because, you know, even neutrals watching this game are getting like sick to their stomach with the nerves and how tense it is. Imagine being a Raptors or a Celtics fan in this series. This is absolutely unbelievable. This is fantastic basketball, and we'll appreciate it for that at the very least. But thank you so much for watching. If you are still here, please like the video if you like, and subscribe to Amateur Hour Sports for more content just like this. If you are here, please let me know any other video ideas if the Raptors are to perish from the playoffs, which I hope they do not. But if they are to do so, please give me some ideas for some other content you would like me to present on this channel. If I can't do any more Raptors game recaps, would you maybe want to see me do other teams or other sort of NBA content? Please let me know in the comments down below. At the end of the day, I believe what I say. If you disagree, that is okay. We will see you again next time.